I mean, if you throw it back to the aprons that I wore while cooking, they were paper thin. Everything was made out of plastic. If you got too close to a fire, you literally caught on fire. I mean, it was like a hazard to our lives. And what I wanted to do was elevate the quality of every single detail in the apron.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Eliza Barbanel. Ellen Marie Bennett is the founder and chief brand officer of Hedley & Bennett, a beloved apron and kitchen gear company that's found in top restaurants around the world. She's also a chef and the host of Kitchen Glow Up, a new kitchen renovation show on Tastemade. It's so fun to have Ellen on the show to talk about Hedley & Bennett's evolution, the CPG cookware boom, her proudest kitchen renovations, and more. Ellen Marie Bennett, this is Taste. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, girl.
Is it silly to say that I thought maybe you would show up in an apron?
Oh, it's in my bag. Don't you worry.
Oh,
it will
really?
be on my body before I leave.
Okay, have you ever had like an unusual situation where the apron has come in handy, like outside of the kitchen?
Every day, all the time. I think I was breastfeeding the other day and I covered myself with it, you know?
Perfect use for the apron.
Very functional.
I love to hear it, and I love to have you here in New York. I'm curious if you have any fun food plans while you're here in the city.
I always end up at Via Carota. Rain or shine, day or night, I need to sit there and have that giant, beautiful salad that just looks like a layered cake from the gods and a huge bowl of pasta. So I will be doing that for sure. Everything else is just like rogue and renegade. Oh, I'll be going to Chouk tomorrow.
Ooh, that's
Right?
awesome.
Chouk?
Yeah, Chouk.
Yeah.
And I love that you're from LA, but you're still seeking out a salad here in New York. I think that's very appropriate. It is such a good salad.
It's such a good salad, but don't make me feel too on brand to LA. I'm also going to consume massive amounts of pizza.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like LA and the pizza scene, there is something going on there. Not like the New York style slice, but like the California wood burnished pizza.
Yes. We definitely, something is happening. The quarter sheets of our lives are alive and present for sure.
We are big fans of quarter sheets here at the podcast. We've had both Erin and Hannah on the show before, and I say this a lot, but I do think her cake is the best cake I've ever had.
I agree, and I don't even like cake. And I'm like, girl, what did you do to this? I would text her when I was pregnant and just be like, I need your pizza right now with a deep voice. And she would be like, okay, come in 20 minutes. I'll have your slices ready. It was a deep burning need.
What was the pregnancy craving? Was it a specific slice of pizza or just all the pizza?
It was her pizza in particular, their pizza, and the pepperoni pizza, and usually 4 to 5 slices, which is an aggressive amount of quarter sheets pizza because each one is like massive.
It's a hefty slice for sure.
It's a hefty slice for sure. Yeah. And then another time I was very in the mood for tuna casserole. Don't ask me how that happened. I haven't had it since I was maybe 9 years old. And one day it just hit me like a brick in the head. I was like, I need a tuna casserole right now. And I made it. Hannah did not participate in that, but it was just a fun, ridiculous thing I ate.
Did it hit for you to actually eat it after the craving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was kind of disgusting because warm tuna, I don't know, in that setting, it was a little weird, but I ate it and it was beautiful.
Well, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but maybe like a tuna casserole pizza is in our future. I think there's something there, actually.
Right? Actually, maybe on some nice focaccia, really like slathered in olive oil.
Yeah. Crispy, maybe a little bit.
Yep. Little crispy edges.
Well, okay. I'd love
Parmigiano
to
Reggiano.
talk about LA restaurants all day with you, but it's special to have you in the studio. So I obviously want to dig into your work. And I was wondering if you could maybe take me further back, like pre-Apron cookware empire. I know that you got your start working in restaurants and that you went to culinary school. And I believe you went to culinary school in Mexico City. Is that right?
That's right.
I'm so curious to know what that was like and if there were any kinds of classes that you got to take that were particular to getting to go to culinary school in Mexico City as opposed to here in the United States.
You know, the thing that I remember the most, honestly, were the tests. It was in Spanish. Everything was in Spanish. And while I am a native speaker, my mom raised me speaking Spanish. My dad is English. His family is English and Swedish. My mom is Mexican. So in the house, we always spoke Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, in life, we spoke English. Like, try doing a pivot table or Excel in Spanish with everything being taught in Spanish. It was painfully difficult. And that is what I remember the most. I also remember really, really fun chili classes where they would bring in the most eccentric chilies you've ever seen, and we would taste them raw right there on the spot or dried. And it was, I don't know, it was like very alive. You know what it was kind of like? Like Omnivore, the chili episode. Have you watched it?
No, I haven't watched it yet.
It's amazing.
Okay.
But it's just very much like to the veins. You're not just reading textbooks. It's very hands-on, full throttle, in Spanish, colorful, loud, you name it, it was happening.
Well, I love that you did that. And then you cooked at some places in Mexico City before you went back to LA.
I did. I even signed up. I signed myself up. I say it like there was a little sign-in sheet, but I signed myself up to work in these little places called fondas too. You know what a fonda is?
Yeah, I've been to a couple.
Oh, they're the best. You like basically pay 40 pesos. They sit you down. There's like one dish, and that's what everybody eats. And these grandmas taught me some of the most delicious ways to cook Mexican food. And it's like, yeah, you can learn highbrow, but you also want to learn legit old school OG recipes. And to me, that's what's most inspiring about Mexican cuisine.
Yeah, I think like places that have a specialty that they are so consistent at doing, you can learn so much, like obviously about that dish, but also just what it means to really invest in a technique of something. I'm trying to think about, I went to Fonda Margarita, I think is the pozole one in Mexico City.
Epic.
Pozole is like my biggest comfort food. It's so good. And I feel like it was really hot when I went there, but I didn't care. And I just was trying to eat as much of that bowl as I could.
Well, what's funny is that in Mexico, nobody cares if they're eating soup in hot heat. Like, it doesn't matter. I actually remember a lot of times when I was growing up eating like boiling hot caldo de res or caldo de pollo. And it's like 100 degrees outside, but it cools you down in the way that you drink hot coffee in Veracruz in the middle of the day, and it's like 105 degrees outside, and you're chugging hot coffee.
Yeah.
It cools you.
That's what I was going to say. Some people like eating like warm temperatured foods when it's hot out, also eating spicy food when it's hot out. I feel like it makes the ambient temperature of the world feel less spicy in comparison.
Totally. That's very true.
Yeah. Well, okay, after working in these restaurants, you launched Headley and Bennett in 2012, which I think of as such a different era of like kitchen and restaurant and food culture compared to now. Obviously, it's changed in so many different ways, but I'm curious, like looking at how you think the food world has changed, like alongside the business, what would you say are some of the biggest differences from then until now?
You know, I feel like when I was in that stage, everything was very highbrow chefs. It was very much like chef coat, 2 Michelin stars. I mean, I worked at a 2 Michelin star restaurant, and that was my world. But
at Providence?
Yes.
Yeah.
At Providence in LA. But at the same time, there was this kind of thing happening where chefs were becoming more and more forward facing. They were coming out of the background and they were getting in front of the camera, whether it was on Top Chef or Food Network. And there was a serious rise happening. And we kind of became their, designer. I was like their stylist, if you will.
Yeah, like what are you wearing tonight on Top Chef? I'm wearing Headley and Bennett.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'd text me, be like, I'm going to be on TV next week. What do you got? What have you got? And people would be like, oh, you got to hook up with Ellen. She'll take care of you and make sure you look good. And so a lot of it was very like, if you know in that era. And I was being their co-pilot to making themselves look and feel great while they were going out and kind of like getting out from behind the stove. And then there was this shift where it became the days of like Glossier, right? Do you remember everything was like a matcha and every restaurant looked white and pink and pastel.
The all-day cafe kind of era.
Exactly. And so then we went through that. And then there was this like period of time where it was Brussels sprouts and asparagus on an egg on an asparagus pile. And I was just like, oh my God. And then it moved out of there. And I feel like now we've really embraced cultural differentiation. And I freaking love it. Like, I am so here for it. I've always been so proud to be Mexican. And while I grew up in the States and I have technically an American passport, I also got my Mexican citizenship when I lived in Mexico. And like, you've never seen somebody more happy to pay Mexican taxes than this one right here. I was literally like at the Mexican IRS being like, yes, fist bumping into the air the day I became legitimately Mexican. And I'm just so proud of it. So the fact that people are embracing their culture now too, through food, and not just like, oh, let me make a Mexican dish that's French more than Mexican. It's like people are leaning into their grandma's recipes and their mom's recipes. Don't you think? It's like
Yeah.
really taken a moment, and I love it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think looking at like what's happening in food media or certainly like TV shows like The Bear, which we can talk about, like I think it went from championing like a specific kind of food or restaurant into there just being this interest in food and food culture at large, and that people can find pockets and audiences within that, and it doesn't have to be all the same. And I think even looking back to when Headley and Bennett first launched, I think the view of a chef in that moment was white coat, big tall toque, white hat, and even the aprons being colorful and workwear inspired and almost like a French chore jacket. It kind of seems like aesthetically you were trying to hint at something else.
100%. And I think when I first started, I began with like a gray apron and a black apron. And I very quickly was like, what if I do a red apron and a yellow one and straps that are colorful? And next thing you know, our aprons were the most colorful thing ever. But I felt like I was able to give people this identity that they could show up and show their true colors in a very professional setting. Like they could, today you'll see this very legit chef and they're walking around in our, I don't know, like Winnie the Pooh apron or a Grateful Dead apron. And it's just cool that they can show themselves in that way while still being legit and proper. And now that we're in the home cook space too, it's like we're still making the same product. We're just doing it in a way that's fun and relevant and covered in collabs to make it interesting for people at home to realize, you know what, you also need an apron.
Yeah, they're literal true colors being shown with the apron.
Exactly.
I want to talk about what you think are the successful elements of the apron design for a minute, because obviously we're talking about branding and marketing and the fact that these chefs were going on TV and wanted to look good, but I don't think the aprons would have had staying power if they weren't actually meaningfully better to wear in some kind of way. What do you think are the core details that kind of set it apart?
I mean, if you throw it back to the aprons that I wore while cooking, they were paper thin. Everything was made out of plastic. If you got too close to a fire, you literally caught on fire. I mean, it was like a hazard to our lives. And what I wanted to do was elevate the quality of every single detail in the apron. And, if I think about Providence, every dish we made, we were flying fish in from Japan. We used the best ingredients. Everything was from the farmer's market. Everything was sourced very specifically. And I just applied that exact same methodology to the aprons. And I was very curious. Like I talked to every chef that I was working with. Everything was made to order. So I would say, what do you need? What do you want? What doesn't work? And I would listen and kind of treat it like I was the doctor and they were my patient. And I would just pick up all their little cues, and they'd be standing there with a crappy apron on and saying, look at where my hand lays. I want it to be in a pocket. Can you fix that for me? And I would literally like draw on the fabric, get the right measurement, test it, give it back to them, and they'd be like, it's perfect. And then I would take that and I would do it over and over and over again. This was years of futzing with it. And we only made aprons for a very long time. Like we didn't actually make any other product. So we perfected it the way that, somebody like Stephen Allen perfected the collared shirt. Like this was our craft. And because we were using high quality fabrics, brass hardware, the straps around the neck don't shrivel up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was allowing people to take their logo, take their brand, and put it on our product, but help them. It wasn't just like, what's your logo? Let me slap it on the front. It was like, hey, I actually think that logo should be a little smaller. Let's put it in the top left corner. And look, if you do it like this, it'll look really great. It's above the fold for Instagram and your team will feel awesome. And it was almost like we were their marketing co-pilots alongside their designers and stylists. And it just became this like beautiful friendship and then a transaction, but not a transaction first. Like I never approached a chef like, ooh, you're going to buy my aprons. I was more like, hey, I have something really exciting that I'm doing. Could this help you? And if not, tell me what you think I can do better. And it was always like that. And that really built this like loyal, beautiful kind of crew of people that we call our apron squad that rock our gear to this day. When, they first met me at the farmer's market and it was just me hustling it out of my car. Like nobody knew who we were. Nobody cared. We just made people care because of the people wearing it and because of the quality, to your point. If it if it didn't last, we wouldn't be around anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe this is because I don't have an apron and cookware company. So correct me if I'm wrong. But I wonder if in some ways it was almost I wonder if in some ways it was helpful that you weren't super well known because it wasn't opportunistic that you were coming in and trying to make something for them. It was that you were kind of homegrown in this industry and you had this passion project. And I feel like maybe like chefs and kind of creatives in general, when they're making something themselves, like they're more able to buy into an idea than to buy into a brand in some ways.
Totally. I also, yeah, I remember when I first met Michael Voltaggio and Brian, his brother. I was a cook at Providence on the line cooking for Cimarusti. And I was like, hey, I have an apron company. And I was sitting next to him, like chopping vegetables for the event that we were doing that night. And I'm like, if you have any thoughts about it, I'd love to like show you what I'm working on. It was very sincere and genuine. And they were just impressed that I was willing to, I guess, put myself out there and try. And I wrote a book a few years ago, actually. Funny enough, in Penguin Random House, picked up my book. So we're in the building. We're back in the building.
Love it.
But in it, I talk about how, like, be shameless about trying to get out there in the world. Like, don't be ashamed of talking to people, of presenting your ideas. If you do it from a genuine place because you believe in it and it's actually providing something that the world needs, like, dude, go for it. Why be afraid of that? What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no? Who cares? The next person might say yes. And that was my approach. And I think people just were like, okay, she's crazy enough to talk to me in the middle of a farmer's market and throw an apron on me. This must be something. Like, sure, I'll give her 5 minutes to see what she's got to offer. And then they would buy an apron from me.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you doing aprons before you decided to expand?
I mean, we're talking like 7+ years.
Yeah.
Like, this is not an overnight success. I would say from the get-go, I was playing the long game. I was like, I'm going to build a legacy brand. I'm going to keep my word. I'm going to make sure people love the product. It's going to last today, and in 10 years they'll still have the product. And so for a long time that's all we did. And then it was really during COVID and then a few collaborations that we did along the way that made us realize there's this whole other universe of other product that we can go after that's really cool, that our consumers have been saying, yo, what are you doing? I need knives. I need cutting boards. I need towels. I need all these other things. Can you make them for me too? Because I can see you're obsessed with quality.
So I'm really interested as a chef and also as a designer, when you are talking about expanding into these other products, how do you start with perfecting something? Because there are obviously so many brands that have been making beautiful knives and towels and all of these things for a while.
Yeah. So I honestly took the exact same approach that we did with the aprons. It was like, hey, what do you need? What do you want? What sucks? What's not working? And tell me what you like about what's currently out there. And then we're going to make it super functional and then make it look beautiful. So we always we're very nerdy. We go deep, deep, deep into nerdiness. And we go into professional kitchens like Providence, Citrine in LA, all these different restaurants, Evan Funky, they all helped us design the knives. So we would bring them knives, we'd bring them 3D prints, and I'd put them in their hands. Our team would be there. They'd be taking copious notes and being like, how does that feel in your hand? What do you think of this? Okay, what's missing? We'd be recording Cimarusti while he's talking to us about, his favorite steel from Japan, and just picking up little notes from them as they were describing stuff. So one of the features on our knives is like the top of the blade is curved so that you don't get the callus on your finger versus normally it's like a right angle.
Mm-hmm.
We got that from the sous chef at Citrine, who was like, my favorite knife ever that I got in Japan was this one company and they rounded and it was this maker and he just did it by hand. And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And from there on out, all of our knives had that detail. But you'd never get that from a survey if you're just launching a survey online. So to me, I think the grassroots approach has really helped us perfect every single time, new product that we come out with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like as someone in food media, I see all of these new cookware brands that are launching all of the time. And sometimes they look really beautiful, but the quality maybe isn't quite there. And it's always interesting to think about in 10 years' time, who's still going to be around, because there are brands like Le Creuset that have been making things for such a long time. I'm curious if there are any misconceptions or maybe secretly tricky things about making cookware and, things that are not just textile based like aprons.
Oh my gosh, it's a whole other beast. Like
Yeah.
it took us years to develop our knives. Like we built the supply chain. We had to go out and figure out steel and
Right. Like,
what that
what is that
even
even?
means. You're like, cool. I started an apron company out of my house and now we're going to develop an steel supply chain. Very different can of worms. And it took honestly, a lot of outside people helping us. Let me give that to you again. It took a lot of outside consultants and guidance and help from many, many different people to kind of find our way through the streets of the world to find partners that had the same quality demands that we have on any product we make. You know, after you're making aprons for so long, when you launch a new thing, there's an expectation that it's
Yeah.
got to be a certain quality, right? And so that's just one of the words that people use the most with us, and we couldn't mess that up. So there was a lot riding on that next product extension, and it took a really long time, but I'm super proud of how they came out. And I think people really love them. They they brag about how much the tips of their fingers they've cut off with the knife. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, but you're welcome. Like, it's
Yeah.
good.
Maybe get a red apron so the blood doesn't show up as
Yeah,
much.
exactly.
So I mentioned the bear a little bit before, which has emerged as such a big cultural signifier, I think, for the food brands that they feature on the show. Obviously, the Headley and Bennett aprons, but also smaller makers like my friend Mariana Fierro is an illustrator who makes these mortadella hand towels that they had on this past
Oh, I remember
season.
those. Those were sick.
They're really cool. And for her, I think it was such an exciting moment as a small brand, especially to be featured in that kind of way.
Yeah.
And I'm curious because you have been in this industry for so long, like what kind of interesting things you see there about how there is a show like The Bear that can be almost like co-signing products in the food space by featuring them on the show.
Yeah. No, I think it's incredible. I mean, the minute I saw the bear the first time, I was like, oh my God, they did it. Like they actually captured the essence of the insanity.
Yeah, they're
Which
drinking from
is-
the deli containers.
I mean, God, all of it, it's so good. And I know some people are like, oh, it's too much. But I guess I miss that energy a lot. And I have this like nostalgic feel for it. And yes, there were plenty of times where I was crying in the walk-in. But I also remember all the times that we went down in flames and got to the end of service and survived. And that's just like a notch of confidence on your confidence belt of life. And I love it. So the fact that people can watch that and feel like they get a little taste of it, I think is incredible. And I do see, John O'Pendolfi's plates on there, which I love and I have at home. So just seeing people that are out there working their butts off, that are the makers behind the scenes, behind the chefs, it's pretty cool to have something like The Bear give them a platform to, including ourselves, be able to go out there and show the everyday person who these people are, because it's really hard to have a business and it's really hard to have a restaurant. So we're kind of like all in parallel running together, trying to just like make the tide rise,
Yeah, I agree. And I think in the same way that we're talking about the little behaviors in the first season, that felt really authentic to people who work in restaurants, having these products that feel like they're a part of this food world that people are excited in is almost like another way of validating that the people that are making the show care about the larger industry or ecosystem that they're a part of.
Totally, totally.
So I also want to talk to you about your new show on Tastemade, Kitchen Glow Up, which is where you go and renovate people's kitchens until they're chef approved. As someone who has had many bad New York City apartments with bad kitchens, I love watching this show. And I'm so curious what made you want to do a kind of kitchen renovation show in the first place?
I totally believe in making things come to life when you see them in your head. It's like one of my greatest joys is to imagine it and then see it appear. And I have had this image in my head of this show for, I kid you not, 12 plus years.
Wow.
I knew it had to do with food. I knew it had to be in the kitchen, and I knew I was going to make people feel more confident, which is kind of the premise of Headley and Bennett. It's like to inspire confidence and creativity in the kitchen. And I thought, God, how cool would it be if I could go into someone's home and redesign it? And as the years went by, I met Andrew Zimmern many, many moons ago, like I think year 1 of Headley and Bennett. We hit it off. We've been friends ever since. And we were always like, we're going to do something together one day. And we looked each other in the wide of the eye and we like made that decision and planted that seed. And I think it's important for entrepreneurs and frankly anybody with a dream to just remember that it takes a long time and it's a windy ass road. Like that was in 2011, let's say 2012. Now we're in 2024 and it finally came out. The amount of times that thing almost came to be and then died is more times than it actually came to life. And so for me, it's just really exciting that it's now out there and it's very nerdy. It's super functional. And in a funny way, I kind of liken it to like The Bear meets the Home Edit. I don't know if you've ever seen the Home Edit.
Yeah, like the kind of organizing show. They have like a book also.
Exactly. And it's very much like heavy container store. Everything looks very pretty. But I take it to The Bear in the sense that I'm like, okay, what's in your drawer? We're going to empty everything out. We're going to label it. Treat your refrigerator like a freaking walk-in. We're going to make it labeled. We're going to create zones in your kitchen. Prep, cook, serve, store. Like, it's very chefy, but approachable. And you're not getting scolded. You're getting taught how to think like a chef and be efficient like a chef. And then, by the way, we make it look beautiful at the end, too. So it's like everything you love in a design show, you've got your good before and after. But then the entire kitchen actually functions so much better than what you had originally. And it's on a budget. Like we did this 2 weeks per kitchen. So for 3.5 months, we overhauled 8 different kitchens, 2 weeks each kitchen, which is psychotic, but we did it.
It's so much work. And also kitchens are so, I think more than any room in the house, especially if you like to cook, kitchens are so particular to people and the kinds of things that they want to make or the appliances that they want to have out in front. And, I know when people come over to my house and they want to help me cook or even help do the dishes, I say no because it's my kitchen and I know where everything is. Like
Totally.
No one is going to be able to put away things in my kitchen better than me. And so I would imagine working on this show, like there were probably a lot of people that had specific requests or things they didn't necessarily want to have change. And I'm curious if there were any before and afters that you were most proud of or maybe like difficult challenges you had to solve?
Yeah, one of them was actually really challenging is a woman who's like 70 something. Her daughter signed her up for the show. And
Classic.
Classic. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I kind of had to convince her to let me do this live. And I didn't realize how emotional this would be for everybody. But every kitchen, rain or shine, somebody cried, somebody was upset about something because there's all this like nostalgia attached to dishes, to places they've been, to maybe something they got as a present from someone who's passed away. There was a big kind of side of heaviness that I didn't realize. And I had to coach them and guide them through to the other side and help them let go of a lot of stuff, physically stuff. And this woman who was 70 something, she had a stroke and her house was very small. And so she had to navigate cooking with her husband, grabbing everything for her because she couldn't find anything. And when we were done with that kitchen, she looked at me and she was just like, I had no idea how much I actually needed this. And you changed my approach to cooking completely. And I created all these extra pockets in her house that were not in the kitchen. So I like turned her husband's office into a wine room and a pantry. And I turned their hallway that was a laundry room into a storage area. And I turned her dining room into a party zone where she could put all her entertaining gear. She had like, I'm not exaggerating, over 100 platters because she loved to entertain. And so to get to do this and show people how to take something very unique and apply it to their home, I think is like really practical. And it's not so out of reach. It's not like we're doing $200,000 a house remodels that you see on television. You're like, well, great. How the hell am I going to do that at my house or my apartment in New York? That's a rental, right? This is like you can glean little details. And what was fun is like even our camera crew would go home and they'd be like, Ellen, I redid my spice cabinet last night because of you. And look at my pantry. I made it better. And my Tupperware drawer is fixed because of you. So it's like really, just practical stuff.
Yeah, I love the idea that like kind of the whole house can be an extension of the kitchen if you want it to be.
Yeah.
And I do think there's something very rewarding. Like once you start to organize and put things away, it feels good to do that. And then you just kind of keep going in that way.
Yeah, it's really cathartic. And once you have I call them like little parking spots. Once everything has a parking spot, you just kind of have to return it back to those spots. And if you divide up any kitchen, no matter how big or how small, into these zones I mentioned, like prep, cook, clean, everybody has that. Like, there's not a kitchen that doesn't have cleaning stuff and they're spread all over the place. Or maybe they entertain a lot, but they entertain a lot during the holiday, but then their kitchen is ruined for the rest of the year because they have to move this giant turkey roaster every time they grab a pot. That's the kind of stuff that messes people's home kitchens up. So I really streamline it, and yeah, you got to watch it. Like, it's really good. I am proud of it because how nerdy we got.
I love that. And I'm curious if you went home and looked at your own kitchen differently afterwards. Did you make any changes or was it all dialed in?
I have been making changes to my kitchen every day since
Forever.
Forever. Yeah. I feel like the kitchen really took root during COVID because no one was going out. All I was doing was working my ass off at Headley and Bennett because we did this crazy mask initiative. And I would go to the office and then I'd come home and I would be organizing my pantry at like 10 o'clock at night, and my husband would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm literally just regaining my sanity here. I'm organizing my fridge. I'm organizing my drawers to find myself again."
Yeah, I got really into labeling things in my fridge and pantry during the pandemic. I think because I just was cooking at home so much and there were so many leftovers floating around that I needed to know when I had made something. And also the days had all blended together at that point. So I just was like, I don't know which Tuesday I made this on. But I still love to do it just because I think looking in the fridge and seeing everything labeled is so satisfying. And now whenever my friends don't do that, I always just want to bring them like a masking tape and a Sharpie.
Totally. I found this white chalk erase marker that I'm obsessed with, and I label every single thing in the fridge, including what's in the veggie drawers, because you forget that there's that red radicchio in the back left corner. So if you label everything on the front, you're like, okay, what do I have in here? Oh, I have celery, radicchio, 2 avocados. Great. And that's a hot little tip I share.
I'm really excited to look this up after this. I have a whiteboard on the front of my fridge, and I write all of the produce that I'm trying to use up on it, which I know you could just open the fridge and look inside.
No,
but
I like your system.
It's like a second reminder, and then you can brainstorm things that you would want to make based on what you've written on the fridge as well.
I love that. Sometimes I'll do that when I go to the farmer's market. I'll write down the things that I bought and stick it on the fridge. So similar system.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit about the pandemic before, and I would imagine that it probably fueled a lot of growth in terms of the home cooks that were interested in cooking in the first place and also like buying things to equip their kitchens. And obviously we're a couple of years after the start of the pandemic. Do you feel like that interest has sustained, or are we kind of in a different era of home cooking now?
It's a funny, different era. I think people are not as obsessed with sourdough bread, for example.
Yeah, I, for one, am not anymore.
The starters have died.
My starter did die, yeah.
But I do feel like it sparked a lot of people who didn't cook at all that now still cook. That is the big difference. It like forced entertainment. And I think because of Instagram, because of social media in general, it's an outlet for people to just show some creativity that they get to do quickly. Like, what other thing can you buy 3 different items and turn it into a soup? It's a beautiful, quick hit of endorphins to get to turn something into something else so fast and get to nourish yourself and bring people around a table because of this thing. And that's pretty beautiful. So yeah, I do believe it's sustained. It's just, people want to go out too. It's a blend.
Yeah. Can I ask you about what it was like making a Crocs collab also?
Yeah.
Like, how did that happen? Like, what was the dream with that? I feel like that must be such a fun thing to get to do.
Honestly, the collabs we have done are like pinch me moments every time. I'm so proud of our team for the things that they've pulled off, and the Crocs one was pretty damn special. Seeing the gibbets that had a little Headley and Bennett apron with the red ampersand on it was like, oh my God.
Wait, are gibbets, is that what it's called? The things that you put in the hole?
It's the official name.
Wow.
For the things that go in the hole. That sounds funny. But
I don't know what I thought they were called, but gibbets is very cute.
It is cute. Yeah. So we created all these little gibbets. There's one that's a deli cup. There's an apron. There's a knife. There's one that says "Yes, Chef," and it was like almost a 2-year process. So it was pretty crazy. And you meet certain teams, and they're kind of like, okay, who does she know? What's the world? What's her demographic? But then they're also like, you're super cool. We want to collab. So they're kind of sussing you out, but also have already sussed you out beforehand. And now you're just like going on dates.
It's like Big Croc trying to work it through.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, when they came out, it was, we were we were pretty proud of that one.
And it makes a lot of
we made them
sense.
very nerdy too. Again, back to the nerdiness. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. We do things very beautifully, but truly at its roots, it's like function. Every crock had, sole like that were water resistant and slip resistant. And it's just like, what are the 800 ways we can make this thing work better? And then we'll do it.
And I guess to connect the dots for someone who's listening, the connection is that a lot of chefs and food people wear Crocs in the kitchen. So that's why it made so much sense as a collab.
Yeah, exactly. But like, for example, we did a collab with Vans. Some people wear Vans in the kitchen, but it's like a little dangerous because they're slippery. So when we launched that one, that was pretty special because we also did a slip resistant sole. And the sole of our Vans shoes are a rainbow stripe, not associated with pride, but more associated with joy and happiness. And just like, you can be very serious on the top of your uniform and then you flip your shoe and it's colorful and it's just kind of like a pep in your step at the bottom of the sole.
I love that. And I feel like we've been talking a lot about other people's kitchens. So I want to ask you about what's happening in your kitchen these days.
Ask me away.
Obviously, you're here in New York right now, but when you're back home, are you doing a lot of cooking at home? And like, what does that kind of look like for you?
Yes, I'm cooking a lot, especially since I had a baby 3.5 months ago. And
Congrats.
Thank you. And I had been on maternity leave, but I love cooking and I was trying to find my way in the world again. And so I have this beautiful tree in my backyard and a big wooden table. And I literally just took what is it called? An induction burner.
Mm-hmm.
I just put it out there, plugged it outside, and have been making tons and tons of food in the backyard. Just like,
I've been
trying to
seeing
be my
videos
Ina
of
Garten.
this. I didn't realize that it was just right outside your kitchen in the backyard. That's so fun.
Yeah. It's just like, back in the day when I started Headley and Bennett, I did that with $300 out of my house. It was very scrappy. I'm still a scrappy person in my soul with anything new I want to do. So it's just like, you look around and what do you have and focus on that. Don't focus on what you don't have. And I was like, okay, there's a table. I have an induction burner inside. I'm going to throw it outside and we're going to start making some videos while I cook and regain myself. Full stop. And I just started. I didn't make a big to-do out of it. And it became this thing that gives me a lot of joy. And sometimes I throw my son in there with me. I now have friends and creators come to my house. I have chefs come and visit. And we're all just like huddled around the table in my backyard cooking outside. My way to pretend I'm still cooking professionally in my soul.
Yeah. Why did you want to go outside in the first place?
Oh, well, it's beautiful. It's bright. It's Pasadena.
Yeah.
It's LA. The sun is shining. And what's going on in my kitchen inside, if I'm being perfectly honest, is like I have 2 little babies. There's a lot of action.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to survive. So by being outside, it's like it's my own little sanctuary, I guess.
Yeah, I like this idea that the kitchen in your house is where you're feeding your family, and then the kitchen in the backyard is where you're feeding yourself or the things that you want to be doing.
Oh my God, well said. Yeah, that is exactly what I'm like, you're right. Thank you. Just a quick therapy session in here.
Yeah.
And then I also have a Gosney dome set up. I have a big green egg. I have a Traeger. And they're all lined up next to my table. So it kind of feels like an Ace True Hardware / Home Depot out there because there's
I don't know the first thing you just said. What's a Gosney dome?
Oh, a Gosney is a pizza dome oven.
Gotcha.
And it's literally shaped like a dome. And so I have a pizza oven and then all this different, these smokers. So I can cook it there too.
I love that. Clearly, I have no outdoor space here in New York. So I don't even want to know what I'm missing
You're like,
out on.
Don't tell me about your Traeger, lady.
Yeah, the green egg alone is sad. Well, I guess we've been talking about so many of the different things you've been working on. I'm curious if there's anything coming out in the next couple of months or in the future of Headley and Bennett or your own life that you're excited about and want to share?
Okay, so in Headley and Bennett land, things we have cooking are a pretty cool NFL collab, which I'm really, really pumped about. It's got a lot of teams, obviously, and it's really fun. And tailgating is such a thing that it just felt like a really natural extension of what we're already doing. So that one's coming out. And we have a Gosney dome, which I mentioned earlier. It's called an Arc XL. It's a very fancy name. But it's basically like a pro-grade pizza oven that's super legit, gets to 900 degrees. It's crazy hot. And the pizzas look like what you'd buy at Roberta's. Like they're freaking gorgeous, and it's in your backyard. So we did a very colorful one, and then in a nod to Headley and Bennett, and then we have a whole collection of aprons coming out. That's actually why I'm in New York right now. I'm doing a dinner with Eric Wareheim to celebrate the launch of the Gosney Dome.
Well, I'm so glad you educated me on what the Gosney Dome is, because now I can be really excited because I can picture it in my head. And that must be a really fun dinner to get to do also. Can you talk about the menu at all?
Yeah, it's very Mexico City inspired. I got married in Mexico City, and so everything was very much like, how do we bring the roots of the way I like to eat Mexican food to here? So think like Contramar vibes. There's going to be fish that's zarandeado, so open up, butterflied. Lots of churros that will be handmade there. Handmade tortillas with macienda. Masa, which is my favorite. We're going to have esquites, which have you ever had esquites before?
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Oh,
it's like
so good.
elote, but off the cob, kind of.
That's right. And it's got like butter and mayo and lime juice and chilies. And, you put a little epazote in there to give it some flavor. And it's just like that broth with the mayo floating around is just next level. So
that sounds so good.
Yeah, it's very like, honestly, everything is very homey. It's almost like if a Mexican grandma came up with it, that's what it is. And I think that's right, because everybody here eats really fancy food. I wanted to show them like nostalgia Mexico, not fancy stuff.
Yeah. Have you been to Taco Ramirez yet while being here in New York?
No. Do I need to go?
Ellen, you have to go. It is the best taco in New York. I think the couple that runs it are incredible. They're from Mexico City. It's in Greenpoint. They just opened a second location in the East Village that's called Carnitas Ramirez, and they just do like different cuts of pork only at that one. And then the one in Greenpoint, they do like suadero, campechano, longaniza, and nopales. And it's really like, I want you to go so I can hear what you think about it, but
I'm on it.
I would go there every day if I lived closer. It's quite special.
Oh, wow, that sounds so good. Okay, I will add it to my list.
Okay, so that's my recommendation. To close, I want to play a little like taste check game with you. So I'll ask you some questions and you can just give me the first answer that comes into your head.
Okay, great.
Okay, your favorite cookbook?
Prune.
Your favorite season for cooking?
Oof. In California, all the seasons. It's beautiful summer.
So all of the seasons or summer?
Summer.
Yeah. Your favorite item at Headley and Bennett right now?
Our utility knife.
The most difficult product you've ever designed?
Our knives.
Your favorite music to listen to while cooking?
Arcade Fire.
Your go-to item to order in the pastry case at a bakery?
Ooh. Chocolate croissant.
Something that you will never make from scratch at home. Maybe you'll make everything.
I'm like, oh my God, what would I not make? Honestly, I'm not much of a pastry gal, so probably a very exotic cake.
Okay.
Like, I'm not trying to combat with, Hannah over at Quarter Sheets. I'm like, girl, just get me a cake, please.
Your favorite LA restaurant?
It's super OG, but gosh, I love it so much. Parks Barbecue.
Oh, so good.
So good.
Your favorite LA bakery?
Valerie Confections.
Your favorite farmer's market?
The South Pasadena Farmers Market.
Oh, I actually haven't been to that one.
It's really delightful. It's really, really lovely. You'll see so many chefs there because it's just kind of like the low-key undercover one that people want to go to. And it's Thursday at 4.
Okay.
So it's the end of the day and you bring your family and you eat there and you have dinner and you get your produce. It's really special.
That's such an interesting time of day for a farmer's market.
I know. That's kind of what makes it amazing.
Okay, hot tip.
Yeah.
A restaurant that's not in your neighborhood that you wish could be your neighborhood restaurant.
Ooh. Rustic Canyon.
Okay, and finally, a fictional food scene from like a book or a movie or something that you wish you could eat in real life.
Oh my gosh, what a great question. By the way, this is the best podcast. You're such a good interviewer. Good Lord.
Clayton, keep that in the final episode.
Yeah, with Clayton over there, you guys are killing it.
We got it.
Okay, ask me again. Put it on the spot.
A fictional food scene, like from a book or a movie or something that you wish you could eat in real life.
Okay, lessons in chemistry, the lasagna. There's a lasagna that she makes like 49 times because she's a chemist, and the crunchy, crusty edges when she gets it right look so spectacular. I wish I could have that. Also, the giant cakes in the Marie Antoinette movie.
Oh, You know, I have a
Epic.
friend who's a food stylist, and the reason why she became a food stylist was that movie.
Oh, just beyond.
Well, I love all of these answers, and it was so much fun chatting with you, Ellen. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, you're amazing. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm good. I want to talk 3 things with you.
Let's do it. What's your first one?
My first one is that on my walk over to the studio this morning, I stopped for a sweet treat, which was a plantain sticky bun.
Ooh.
But specifically a plantain sticky bun that Paula Velez, who has a great cookbook coming out this fall called Bodega Bakes. I had her on the show. I'm not sure when that will come out, but this is one of her like very famous recipes, and she partners with Nordstrom. I think this is the second time she's done this, and they have it at all of the Nordstrom cafes across the country for the next like 2 months. And there happens to be a Nordstrom cafe like a block away from where we record, so I stopped by to get one. And it really is such a like beautiful idea for a pastry because it's a plantain pecan sticky bun. It has the pecan on top, and then the plantain is kind of like rolled into the bun itself. So you get these like squishy, banana-y like plantain bites as you're eating. And I thought it was really cool.
I love it. And Paula, Washington, D.C. based creator, recipe developer, online personality. I love Paula. I got to chit chat with her after your interview, and really, it's one of our best interviews of the fall. I can't wait for us to air. We're going to be airing it in a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think Paola is a great recipe developer, and it's cool to be able to like partner with such a big company and have it available across the country. I feel like sometimes I talk about these like pastries that you can only get in New York, whatever city I happen to be in. So this is like a national call out. What's your first thing?
My first thing is I have a new halva that I'm like kind of into right now. Are you a fan of halva? Do you ever?
Yeah, I like sesame as a flavor. I wouldn't say it's something I seek out, but I encounter it and I enjoy it.
You enjoy it, but in like maybe like moderation.
Yeah.
I'm on the other hand, I love halva. It like kind of hits that like peanut butter cup, like part of my body that craves it come now till the end of the year. But Hebel and Company halva, it's made in Los Angeles, and it's a cool company. They do collaborations with Malier. They did a peanut butter and chocolate crisp. They did a recent collaboration with Seattle's Bell's Cookies, which I thought was really cool. They use Sum tahini as well, and I'm just like really into this brand. And I suggest if you're in that like halva mood, why don't you like smash that buy button and check it out. I love it so much. It was a really nice product, and halva is a delicious treat.
That sounds awesome. I'll check it out.
Yeah, what's your next one?
My next one is just an awesome New York City Mexican food update, which is that Mariscos del Submarino, which is like a very famous like ceviche, aguachile, like tostada kind of place in Queens, opened a location in Greenpoint. And I went to it like last week maybe, and I was so happy. I think the people I was eating with were like, you need to stop smiling so much. It's freaking us out. But I really love like Marisco style seafood. I think it's a style of taco that's a little bit harder to find here in New York, and they just are doing it so good.
So Marisco, is that your LA native speaking? I feel Marisco, the style is very common in LA. It's like really great there. Or do you just feel like it's something that you've always loved?
Yeah, I mean, like, mariscos, like, literally means shellfish, seafood. And I do think being from the West Coast or going down to Baja California, like that part of Mexico, like, there's a lot of seafood around. But, you know, New York is technically an island. Like, the seafood isn't coming from right here. But I don't see why we couldn't have that kind of as well. I do think, like, it's more common to have, like, meat-focused Mexican food here on the East Coast. But they have, like, a great menu of, like, ceviche, aguachile. They do, like, tacos doradas that have like the fried shrimp and cheese. Like, I don't think you could really go wrong there. And I would definitely recommend asking for recommendations from the staff, because what they have is they have like an aguachile or something, and you can pick from like 4 or 5 different variations.
My mouth was just like smacking for aguachile as soon as you mentioned that name, and I need to check it out. Where in Greenpoint? It's
like, on Franklin Ave. It's like up on the north end of Franklin. They have a big backyard also, and the vibe there is just really fun.
I love that. My old office for Taste used to be like literally right there.
What a great food neighborhood to be in.
I know. It's no 56 in Broadway, I must say.
No, we got a Sweet Green and a Nordstrom Cafe.
Nordstrom Cafe definitely hits. I've been doing Just Salad recently.
Just Salad.
Emily Sundberg's newsletter inspired me. She like wrote a piece about how they have like a new marketing campaign. I was like, I like these wraps. They're quite good.
Okay.
I'm like gonna wrap run.
But that's not your second thing, is it?
It's not my second thing. My second thing is I don't know if I've ever mentioned Jake's Gouda on the pod. Have you? Do you know that brand at all? Do you know that name?
No, but I like Gouda, so I'm curious.
Well, Jake's Gouda is a terrific company. It's based in Deansboro, New York. I first encountered it at Stissing House, a great restaurant Claire DeBoer runs, and she features it on the menu. And I think I've seen it in some farmers markets and at Murray's. And honestly, I've been a big fan of their smoked Gouda, which has been a big hit for many people. They also have a standard Gouda, but that's not my update. My update is that they now have a cheddar, and it's called Moo Echo. It's extremely crumbly and crystallized. And it's run by an Amish family that moved from Pennsylvania about 20 years ago and settled in Deansboro. And, it's a dairy and a creamery that makes cheese. And I think I posted on Instagram and man, I had some people come out for support. They were all about Jake's Gouda. So I love this product. And perhaps it's found around the country in specialty cheese shops.
I love Gouda and I love products made by the Amish, so I think I'm going to have to check it
Totally. I would love to invite Jake on the podcast, and I kept thinking maybe Jake is some, former banker who ended up making cheese because he's a fan of whatever. I don't know why I had this narrative about Jake not being Amish, but I don't think Jake, the Amish gentleman, would do the podcast, but maybe.
Only one way to find out.
Only one way to find out. I got to hit up that. It has a Yahoo account, and I'm going to hit up the email.
Yeah.
What's your last one?
My last one is a little bit of a more somber one, but I just wanted to say a couple words about Justin Chernow, who was the wine director of Four Horsemen, who unexpectedly passed away in the city recently. I think everybody who works in hospitality, especially who works in wine in some kind of way, has known Justin and been touched by him. And certainly everybody at the Four Horsemen, I think, has been really affected by it. And I think we can link in the show notes to this great remembrance that Grub Street did about him and his legacy in New York. But I just wanted to mention his name on the podcast, as I think a lot of people in the city are doing right now.
Well, thanks for mentioning that, Eliza. It's really, really a good point how influential Justin was. And, I was just speaking about Justin with John Fine, who was on our show about 3 weeks ago. And, Justin and John are quite close. And I'll also link to our conversation with John Fine. And I never got to know Justin Chernow, but of course that piece and many other remembrances for this guy. It really seemed like he was a family man. He had a lot of friends in the industry, but also just from the industry point of view. I remember when I was editing at Punch, his name would come up almost every editorial meeting. Punch is a great publication covering wine and natural wines, and Justin was a real friend of Punch, and I just remember hearing the name a lot, and I got to meet him a couple times in passing. But it's really, really sad to see his passing so soon, and I appreciate you mentioning that, and we'll link to those pieces in the show notes.
Yeah, if it's all right, I'll just read a little quote from it that I think kind of resonates. And it's talking about that in addition to being one of the pioneers of the natural wine movement here in New York, he has all of these kind of music world credentials. In 2002, Chernow started working at a neighborhood wine store called Uva. There was Chamber Street Wines, Diner, 10 Bells, and Uva. That was the entire natural wine scene, more or less, in New York City and in America, says Zev Rovin, who first worked for Chernow at UVA and later hired him to work at his own company, Zev Rovin Selections. He gave that confidence to me and to a lot of other importers that they could go and be a little experimental and be a little bit weird, and that they had an audience with Justin, Rovin says. That grew the industry more than people knew back then.
Those are great words, and we're thinking about it, his friends and family, and of course the Four Horsemen cookbook is out this fall, and I think we're gonna have some folks from the restaurant come in, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation about Justin as well.
Yeah, and in the cookbook, there's suggestions from Justin actually about how to be pairing wine with your meal, which I think is a nice way that his influence can live on in one more way.
Thanks for the remembrance.
Yeah, is there one more thing you wanted to share?
Yeah, absolutely. My last thing is this restaurant, Yao. Did we talk about this? I feel like I'm looking at you and did we talk about this? Because I was really excited about it, but I don't think we've talked about it. So this restaurant, Yao, is really interesting. It opened about a year ago, and I got to go last week. It's in the financial district, literally in a courtyard by Marriott. And so you enter through the lobby, but you enter into the space. It's almost 3 stories high. It's an extremely dramatic opening. And it's a restaurant from the folks behind August Gatherings in Chinatown. And the chef is Kenny Long. And Kenny is cooking really ambitious banquet style cuisine. There's tasting menus available. They start around $150 a head, but you can also order a la carte, which I did. And really, the menu is really cool in that the service is exceptional. But really, there's like a lot of abalone. In fact, there's an abalone menu, which I think is really neat. There's also a full sea perch menu, one with dried tangerine peel. He's cooking this Cantonese cuisine that feels elevated in a way that is a little atypical in New York. And I feel I connected with the cooking, but I also connected with just the way they served it. It felt like a really special place. I can't say I like tried the whole menu. It was only one visit, but I felt like if you're interested in having like a gathering with friends, I'm just really interested in this restaurant and seeing it evolve. I think it wasn't that crowded, but it was late summer, so I'm not going to judge it. But I'd hate to see it skipped over when thinking about visiting ambitious Cantonese restaurants in New York. So
Yeah, I'll have to go check it out.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing your 3 things.
You too. This is Taste is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Abarbanel. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things happening.